everybody. Welcome back. We're thrilled to have you. About a little bit over the halfway point of the first day of this year's Music Policy Forum Intensive. Again, for those of you who have just joined the event, if you want to, don't feel obligated, but we encourage you to just put your location and name in the chat. We've just been kind of keeping track of who's with us, and everybody can get a sense of the global audience that we have today, which has been really flattering, I think, for all of the Music Policy Forum people. We really appreciate everybody from across the world joining us for these conversations. I want to, before we bring in the next group, I want to just flag something, which I think we maybe forgot to flag, or I forgot to flag, but the schedule is organized around these questions we talked about earlier this morning and these key themes. And there's a longer brief, which I am going to put into the chat, which is sort of a program narrative, and it's sort of a longer exposition in terms of how we're framing these questions that we're talking about today and how we kind of see the interconnectedness between all these. You don't need to read it to follow the sessions, obviously, but it may be helpful just in terms of why we're asking these specific questions and kind of, how are we thinking about this again in this particular conference. And again, the pieces that we're talking about now under question 4, how do we support a vulnerable but critical infrastructure, goes around this question of how an ecosystem can't thrive or survive without infrastructure, which again, in the music context, as you all know, I mean, that's venues, critics, radio stations, music shops, retailers, publicists, promoters, record labels, advocacy groups, researchers, all of the interconnected players that make up a scene, and recognizing that, again, this ecosystem is extraordinarily vulnerable before the pandemic. And 2020 is just taking this to another level. So we want to be really thinking again in today's conversations. Obviously, we have to talk about 2020, of course, but we also want to be thinking again about where were we before the pandemic? Where are we going to be after the pandemic? Where can we take action to support this infrastructure, not only next year, but for the years to come? Again, the last session, I'm really, appreciated because it got at some of the almost existential issues that we face around data collection and understanding how do we measure our scenes. This session, again, is really important in a different way because, again, this is our bread and butter, building a live music industry that works for everyone. So again, we know there's some things right in front of us we're going to talk about in this session. We need to pass save our stages. We need to, kind of get to reopening. We need, kind of the Rev's vision to work. We also need to think about, again, cliche come in, what does it mean to build back better? How do we think about this stuff holistically? There's some great conversations about this in our earlier session, including Dessa and Hakeem and others. But I can't wait to hear what these panelists have to say. So it is my enormous honor to bring in two people without which Music Policy Forum wouldn't exist, and certainly this event would not exist. Kate Becker from King County and Dani Grant from the Mishawaka Amphitheatre in Fort Collins. And I'll let you introduce the other panelists and have a great session. Take it away, Kate.
Well, thank you very much, Michael. Thrilled to be here with you all. And okay, I think hopefully you can all see me, but it does not look, thank you, Dani Grant. Okay, thanks. Thrilled to be here with you all. Really delighted to see so many of you in the chat and participating in this. And I just want to say hats off to my Music Policy Forum board member colleagues. And what about Bracy, right? I mean, he just keeps rolling with all of this. Way to go, Michael. So brilliant. Yes. Thrilled to be here today with you and with these extraordinary panelists who I will ask to introduce themselves rather than us introducing them. But Dani, would you like to start?
Hi, everybody. I'm Dani. I'm from Fort Collins, Colorado. I'm a music venue owner. I'm a huge music fan, and I've always tried to be a musician's advocate as well. And these questions and this whole panel is near and dear to my heart, as well as all the other things that we're talking about today. It's been riveting. I thought I would wander more, but I've been here. So.
Thank you, Dani. Hey, Terry Morgan, would you introduce yourself? So happy to have you here with us.
Thanks, Kate, and nice to meet everyone else on the panel. My name is Terry Morgan. I have a company called Modern Enterprises. We're in Seattle, Washington, and I'm a musician, bass player with Leroy Bell, but I'm primarily an impresario. I kind of evolved from different levels of experience and turned them into creative activities. Was an educator at the University of Washington. I taught history of jazz, doing my master's work, and then became a punk rock promoter. Started the Showbox Theater back in 1979. Did all the early new wave punk rock shows, along with classic American greats like Willie Dixon, Sonny Terry, Brownie McGhee, Muddy Waters, Sun Ra. Went on to be a buyer for Bumbershoot. Continued to produce things independently. I've never really had a job. I've always worked for myself. And currently play with Leroy, manage a guy named Alex Shaw, up and coming a new artist, and Zan Fiscum, who was featured on The Voice last year. But pleasure to be here today.
And we are thrilled to have you. Thank you, Terry. Hey, Howie, would you like to go next and introduce yourself?
Sure. First of all, Terry, huge fan, been following you for years. I'm tickled pink to be on a panel with you. My name is Howie Kaplan. I am the owner of the Howlin Music Club here in New Orleans, Louisiana. We just celebrated my 20th year at the Wolf, and we're in our 33rd year. I'm also the manager of the Grammy Award-winning Rebirth Brass Band, and also of the Grammy-nominated Hot 8 Brass Band, along with Big Sam's Funky Nation. I'm an adjunct professor at the University of New Orleans, and also the precinct captain for NEVA here in the state of Louisiana.
Tremendous. Thanks for joining us, Howie. And Martine, can you introduce yourself to this audience?
Yes. My name is Martine Perna. I'm the founder of the band Antibalas in New York. We were also the house band for the Broadway musical Fela. I'm one of the founding members of Sharon Jones and the Dap Kings, and TV on the radio. I recently adjuncted at Penn State University, and now I'm living in Berkeley, California, and became a father about 3 weeks ago. So you might hear a crying baby in the background. And also I've been a panelist on many Music Policy Forum panels and Music City events. So very happy to be here, and it's an honor to be chopping it up with you guys.
And it's clearly our honor to have all of you as panelists. Amazing how much experience is on this panel. I bring a little bit of my own. I was a longtime all ages promoter for many years. And then I went to work for the Seattle Theater Group, which is the largest performing arts organization in Seattle, with the Paramount, Moore, and Neptune theaters. And in that time, I was in New York City as part of my work and saw your band with Fela before we brought it out to the West Coast. So I saw it in New York. So that was amazing, Martine. Yeah, I was an all ages promoter for a long time, and then went on to work in local government, initially for the city of Seattle, running the Office of Film and Music. And now I work with King County Executive Dow Constantine, leading the Creative Economy Initiative at the county level. So I worked with lots of young people who now are struggling to make their living in our region. And so I am really delighted to champion this work and do whatever I can every single day and every single night to help our creative economy, because as Michael mentioned, we were in delicate shape before COVID came, and now we're really facing some new struggles. So love to talk with you all about that, and would love to open with, is there music going on in any of your cities right now? We are in a full entertainment lockdown. Not even a busker is allowed to perform in the state of Washington. Just wondering what's happening in all of your cities and spaces. Anyone can jump in here.
I guess I'll give it a go. In the state of Louisiana, we have gone into what's called phase 3, and in the city of New Orleans, we've gone into what's called phase 3.3. So the city and the state are not on the same page at all times. The current structure is that we can have music, but there's no karaoke, which I'm actually quite thankful for. No singing, no woodwind instruments. The only thing that's allowed are percussion and stringed instruments and DJs, but DJs with no dancing. So we're reliving Footloose here in our own city. So theoretically, there are the brass bands I manage and all the brass instruments that are somewhat of a foundation of the New Orleans sound. None of that can exist right now. And so it's also part of an issue because there's really the city and the state aren't speaking to each other, and the different departments within the city aren't speaking to each other. So you have to go through safety and permits to get a permit, but it's got to go through the health department and the epidemiologist that is the fire marshal for the state. Music venues are required to have different HVAC requirements than any other place, but nobody can tell us why. So it's been very disheartening to try to move forward, but let's be realistic. Even if we could move forward, the reality of doing a normal show is very slim.
Dani, you've got some shows up and going. Can you talk with us about that?
Yeah, the state of Colorado is in a phase 2 in general. But as we've moved through the pandemic, the state has kind of created more and more ways to kind of slice different phases inside of phase 2. So now we've got a dial with 4 parts to it, and different counties across the state are in different parts of shutdown. So where I am in Larimer County, we are doing some shows because I don't believe our state has really addressed music in general in terms of what's allowed and what's not allowed, which could be a little bit of a bummer for us that it doesn't even kind of hit the radar of what we need to be concerned with. But really, most of the music that's happening here in Colorado is, tableside entertainment. So restaurants that are able to open in a limited way, indoor and outdoor, are allowed to have, tableside entertainment. And that's the way music is happening here. And my venue actually has been doing limited capacity shows, the Mishawaka, since June, and have always been kind of teetering on whether or not things will clamp down and shut down to a lower capacity or not. And certainly the shows haven't been generating revenue, but what they have done is put our servers back to work. They've put our gig workers back to work. And so we've been doing everything that we can just to try and knock off a little bit of overhead and try and get people back to work. But in general, the music that's happening here is kind of like other places where drive-ins are allowing some music and tableside entertainment. So it's been a struggle. I feel like right now with the spike that's happening across the country and certainly in Colorado as well, that we might be looking at some shutdowns over the next 4 weeks. And without funding federally, I think that's really could be the straw that breaks the camel's back on some of the venues here and restaurants as well. So I'm really hopeful for some movement with that, because I think without it, we could see even more venues and restaurants really getting into trouble. And how you come back from that, I don't know.
Well, that is part of what we're talking about today, because there is no good roadmap back. And I am so grateful for everyone who's putting their deep thought into this work to help figure out how we navigate this. Martine and Terry, you are both longtime touring musicians. You've spent a lot of years on the road. And just wondering, what do you think the future of the touring industry looks like? Are either of you performing at all in any way right now?
Terry, you want to take this, or should I? Okay, so this is an album cycle for Antibalas. We released our 7th album on Daptone Records, and we had the entire year booked. Half of our performances are usually in North America, and then the other half are around the world: Europe, Asia, Australia, New Zealand. And so everything got canceled, starting around the middle of March. And the first wave was just like, oh, we'll just push it back to the fall. Certain things got pushed back. Then other summer festivals are like, oh, we'll have you in 2021. Now that doesn't look like it's happening. So it's a weird tour. The whole aspect of booking and touring, for those of you who are booking agents or touring musicians, it's so arcane, because there's already a calculus that the venues have of like, what's the best band that I can get on a Friday night that will sell the most tickets? All right, can they come through? Or they route it? Like, it's already such a difficult job. And then when you throw in all of these health regulations, basically the long and short of it is our next gig isn't until May of 2021 in Europe. And that may get pushed back. it was already really hard for us. I mean, we're a 12-person band, plus, as many tech people as we can take on the road, which is usually one or two. So we've been operating in austerity mode pretty much the entire 20 some odd years. But it's gotten a lot harder because the venues have shifted the sort of the burden onto performers of doing the promotion, and so much of the what your guarantee is based on is how many social media followers do you have, whether or not that actually translates into people who will buy tickets or not. So it was already really hard. Now nothing is happening. I'm now in Berkeley, California. I followed my wife out here because she's the one with a stable job and benefits. She's an academic. And aside from some farmers markets, some venues that are, as of October, been able to do small ticketed outdoor shows and just people playing on their porches, there's live music has pretty much ceased to exist. Some really famous venues have shut down. Slim shut down a while ago. There's some other, the Ivy Room, Starline Social Club in Oakland, but almost too many places to count. Places that have been around for at least a decade and have been really part of a scene. So I don't see how we're going to get out of this without an infusion of public money. We tour so much in France, and there they have a system where if you do, I think it's like 49 gigs a year, whether you're a tech person, a musician, a songwriter, a makeup artist, you get paid, you get a maintenance money for the whole year. And we need something like that, because there's no way that we can keep up a level of technical excellence when we might be able to get 10 or 20 paid gigs a year. I couldn't tell you the amount of people I know that are selling drugs right now who never thought they would have to do that to get by. But it's like, what else are you going to do if you don't have a hit and you don't have mailbox money coming in? Like, if people were able to get on unemployment at all, that's gone. So it's like most of the musicians I know that don't have a hit and some passive royalty stream are really seriously considering whether or not they can do this anymore. And these are people that you've seen on TV, so I've never seen it this dire, and only a massive infusion of public money is going to help.
Thank you for that. Yes, that is the quintessential question. If we don't get that federal relief package that is so desperately needed, both for venues and for musicians and for artists, what are we going to do? For instance, what do you think will happen to those closed venues? Do you think some other independent promoter is going to come along and take over those venues and turn it into a new club?
I think, Kate, I think that could be. And I just building off of what Martine said, it's so interesting now. The structure of the deal between artists and venues is really going to have to change. And venues are going to have to meet the artists and take risks and all that. And I feel like there's a big question about what this does to the traditional business model of musicians that are having, a lot of agents, bookers, publicists, marketing people around them that kind of work off of the talent fees that the artists are earning. And I think there's really going to need to be a lot of discussion and thought on how do we restructure the talent fees and the deals that happen right now as we're doing shows that are really risky and aren't about making revenue. We're just meeting everyone halfway and saying, let's go 50-50 split from $1 and see what happens, which is unheard of. And I think it's going to be up to us to really kind of get down to the brass tacks of what are we going to need to do to make sure that the artist is earning what they need to earn in order to continue to perform. What do the venues need and who's taking on what responsibilities? I think it's an opportunity to really break that down and rebuild it back in a way that kind of throws away the old, bro deals and the old situations that we were running into that would kind of limit touring artists to being represented by, bigger companies that are bringing them around the country and that kind of thing. So I don't know. I mean, for me, it's frightening and exciting at the same time. I I don't know how we're going to come out of this without really making some fundamental changes. And, if the artists can't survive on the road, if the artists can't earn a living, and, then there's going to be nothing to, put up on the venue stages. And I think that's something that we all have to really start considering.
Thanks for that, Dani. Go ahead.
No, and I want to echo that too, but we also need to look at it from the other side. And as someone who represents both artist and runs a venue and as a promoter, the entire ecosystem needs to be looked at again. But the reality is there are no venues without artists, and there's no place for those artists to play without the venues. And we can sit here and have a conversation about, the big dollar places, the Live Nations and the AEGs and the bigger promoters, around the country. But the reality is every single artist that, that Terry, everybody you started with, they started at an independent venue. They didn't start with big dollars in their pockets. Mm-hmm. And so the ecosystem has to work its way up. But what we need to be doing is teaching the artist how to better adapt to this, to work in concert with the venue. And especially in New Orleans, I mean, we're looking, and I keep using this phrase, but we're on the precipice of cultural extinction. And as New Orleans goes, and I've said this before, so goes the rest of the country. You can trace every bit of modern music back to Congo Square, back to right here in New Orleans. And I'm not saying that we're trailblazers by any stretch of the imagination. Heck, we trail the country in just about everything at some point or another. But the reality is we need to start looking at the culture in each one of these cities and seeing how our culture bears in every city are doing this, be it in Denver, be it in San Francisco, be it in Chicago. It doesn't really make a difference, where it's coming from. And in particular, New Orleans, we're very dependent upon tourism. Without those 19 million people that come here every year, and Martin, I think we probably met once or twice, because I remember some of my favorite shows with Sharon Jones. Mm-hmm. We need to figure out better ways to adapt to this. And if anybody thinks that Save Our Stages and that legislation, which I've been fighting for since April, we've got 55 co-sponsors on the bill. So if it does come up for a vote, it will pass. But what about the next phase? That gets us to the next part. What about the places like Slim's and Starline and all those that are already closing down or are on the precipice of closing down? How are they going to be? Are they going to have enough capital to make the next step, to be able to put deposits down, to be able to pay the PROs, to be able to pay rent and staffing and all that? We're thinking about the next step. Everybody's in survival mode. Can someone come in and take it over? Well, does everybody know what Mark Geiger's doing right now? What is that, $75, $85 million to take over independent venues? And he's not being shy about it. It's a power grab. Mm-hmm. So we need to be worried about that as well. We definitely need to take a look at everything, but it starts in our own communities. It starts with our own, that's what I'm fighting for every day. We're fighting just like Kate. I'm learning everything every battle you've been through, over the last several years to get the funding, to get the background, because if any place needs it desperately, it's New Orleans.
Yeah. Terry.
Kate.
Sorry, you have to go after Mr. Happy. Sorry about that.
No. I'm totally in your camp. The market in Seattle is totally devastated. Seattle's become a total independent music community. National acts do come, but a lot of acts are breaking and building out of Seattle. And one of the things that I'm encouraged about and that I preach, not just being an artist manager and a musician myself, is that, let's go back to building artists in our own regions. Let's build our family, like Bill Graham did in San Francisco with The Dead and Quicksilver and Jefferson Airplane. Let's make the top regional artists stars in your own community. Don't just rely upon the touring industry to keep your club or your venue or your outdoor amphitheater happening. Build packages, put bands together, build an affinity group that becomes a family that unites behind the industry in your own city. Then things will blossom without having to worry about having to pay high guarantees to national touring acts, because the local people will come out and support their local bands. It's been proven time and time again. The thing that is lacking in a lot of these communities is a cohesive business structure. You have the clubs, you have the venues, but you don't have the agencies. form your own local booking agencies, form these consortiums to support each other, get out there and pull this energy out together. These artists are all dying, and most of them don't have a good business sense. So as part of what I see as our goal is business leaders and elders now in the industry, we need to go out there and put a little punk rock ethic back into the industry. When I got started promoting in the early and late, or in the 70s, there was no structure, there was nothing, and so we called San Francisco and talked to the I-Beam. What are you guys doing? We called Mabuhay Gardens. Hey, what are you guys doing? And started sharing talent. There were no agencies booking the Go-Go's back then. I called Belinda directly, So I'm totally pushing towards getting back to the one-on-one relationship rather than having all this food chain in between the artist and the venue.
Love it. Love it so much, Terry. And I think that so much of our opportunity, at least initially, as we move through this COVID nightmare we're in, is going to be regional. That people are not going to be touring and jumping on planes and traveling across the country in the way that they have. And so building up regional scenes is going to be terribly important, of course. And I am worried about whether we'll actually have musicians, that people who were barely getting by as musicians, and now with unemployment benefits running out, what are they going to do? I know a lot of folks who are trying to get jobs at Costco and at Starbucks right now who have been professional working musicians heretofore, but they've got to figure out how to survive right now. And so we are really in a state of everything being so shook up that we get the chance to rebuild it and rebuild it differently. So when you think about that, Terry, that was great what you just added. What else do you think about as you think about rebuilding better? How do we build back better? And what does that look like? And how do we create more opportunity for those who haven't been part of the fabric of our music scenes before? How do we do that? You all have the smarts to answer that question, so anyone can jump in.
It seems like fans are going to have to take on some of the burden rather than just like, oh, my favorite band might be coming, I'll buy a ticket for, $20 to $50, really putting their money where their hearts are. Like and there are already some platforms that exist, but we haven't been forced to use them. I say we, like the general musical community we have a new album, we really like to go on tour, or we have to go on tour. Where can we go? Where is there guaranteed money? Is there enough, but the tricky thing is stringing it together, the routing, because we could say, we could find, just using my band Antibalas as an example, like we could probably garner enough fan support where people would pay in advance for shows that would make it, where we could afford to go out and do it. However, the trick is, the routing, can we get 10 days of stuff on the West Coast from San Diego all the way up to Vancouver, that makes sense so that we're not zigzagging and burning up gas like that. There's a tremendous calculus to it. And anybody who is a manager, an agent, or musician, venue owner knows how tricky that is. So, but I see the fans, they're, to Howie's point, it is, I have friends who are talent buyers as well. And they're like, yeah, we can't do guarantees anymore, or else we might not be able to survive. So it's like the musicians can't bear any more risk, nor can the venue owners. So it's either public money or the fans. And I think some kind of combination of both of that, like a subsidy to realize that like venue, the value that Showbox or Howlin Wolf has beyond just presenting culture, it's like that is a business where when good things are happening there, that's less likely that bad things happen around it. It's a public safety thing. We don't like right now, just as an example, I'm living on campus at UC Berkeley, not like we live 2 blocks from the main campus. There's only 25% of the students here. So there's so much crime. There's never been more crime than there has been right now, because there are not these venues, whether it's venues or record stores or shops that are open. Like just the value that businesses, regardless of what they're doing, offer to a healthy society in a city just staying open, having people coming and going in and out, doing stuff that, so part of it is, I think, helping people who actually write checks of public money understand all of the sort of intangible value that the entertainment industry offers beyond entertainment. And the math is tricky, but I feel like society is going to fall apart without culture, and that's beyond music, dance, films. And because we can't enumerate every dollar that it generates, we assume that it only generates, whatever alcohol and ticket sales are generated on the night of the show. The other piece is that a lot of people don't see what we do as work because we smile when we're doing it. And oftentimes we'll do it, like I made the mistake of getting into a Twitter argument with somebody about the elections and blah, blah, blah. And then he completely dismissed me because he looked at my profile and he's like, oh, he's not really in the workforce. And I was like, motherfucker, I work 80 hours a week for 20 hours worth of pay. Like, I am definitely in the workforce. I'm a job creator. 70% of what we make when we go on tour is overhead. So that goes into other people's pockets. I got so furious, but it made me realize, I was like, people don't regard what we do as work, so that's a big barrier that we have to get over as well. Like but back to the original point, the fans and public money, because venues and performers we're stretched,
So Martin, can I follow up with a question from that?
Sure.
Because I 100% agree with a lot of what you're saying, but I'm curious how you feel, how it's going to change post COVID. I mean, right now, for months I've been saying we just need to get to spring. We get to spring, we're in good shape. We can start doing shows on a regular basis. But the fact that the numbers are peaking again, there's still no national policy or response to this. And you talk about the fans having to change their expectations. Our entire business model is based on a whole bunch of people getting into a room together.
Right.
And we get a bunch of people that consistently ask, okay, well, when are you going to start doing shows again? And my first response is, when are you going to come see them?
Yeah.
And even people that are hardcore fans, and we've been around for 33 years, we've got a ton of them. They're still not comfortable going out and being a part of this. So maybe fall when things start looking normal again, or maybe, the middle of summer. So as you say that the fans have to kind of change their expectations, how do you see it from a musician side? How do you see that changing? And you too, Terry, because you guys are looking at it from a different view. I'm coming from the venue side, the owner side, and I'm a manager, but I'm not generally out there on the road with my artists.
Well, one thing that I've kind of been consciously doing most of my career is building outdoor events. I see the future of outdoor events coming back faster than indoor events. And so I work with an interesting combination of a symbiotic relationship with corporations, civic organizations, and cities and municipalities. So I go out and raise the money to produce events that I can give away for free, paying the artist, paying the promotion, and providing an amenity to the community and a feel good for the sponsors. That's where I'm focusing right now, 100% on my work for 2021 and 2022. And just as a musician, I'm hesitant to go into a venue just because I'm old and I'm Black and I have high blood pressure and I fit all of those categories of being susceptible to any kind of virus. I mean, I'll be the first in line to get my shot. I'm ready to line up, but there's got to be a future. We got to plan for something. People can't be starving forever. So I see outdoor venues and those kind of activities being the first to come back, and musicians will work for less if they can have the opportunity to play to an audience. There's nothing worse than touring, playing in a venue for 25 people. You may make your minimum guarantee, but you'd rather play for free for 500 or 1,000 people, or for less money. I've been booking talent for 30 years, providing outdoor entertainment in downtown Seattle, and had all kinds of people come through at various phases of their careers and play for reasonable fees, and all have successful experiences. And it all builds up to a legacy that allows everyone to prosper. And it's great for developing acts, the up and coming acts that never get a chance to play a major venue because they don't have all the data and all the stats that qualify them to be a headliner. But they may have an underground fan club out there, people who know them online that support them. So, we just need to kind of change the direction of what we look at and how we value talent. And as musicians, we have to be flexible enough to be able to walk into a situation that benefits us, not just today, but in the future.
Can I add into that? We are in an industry that is a business, but it's so much more than that. I mean, this has been historically storytelling, and music is what marks history. This is what, we look back, through time, and music across cultures. And it's such an important part of our social fabric. And I think that we can learn a lot from the UK and from Europe and other countries that actually put that value on music, that social value, that cultural value on music. We don't have representation federally on behalf of music in terms of it being a social construct and and something that we all need in terms of our history. We're not an airline that needs bailout. We do need to get our business back on its feet, but we also need representation that really accentuates what kind of value we bring that's very intangible, but hugely important to our culture. And I think that's something in the downtime before we're able to get back open, if we can push really hard to try and change that mentality. And I think, it's been so frustrating to me to see such little attention to this industry. And I think that's one of the most beautiful things that NEVA has done, is actually given us a voice up on Capitol Hill where we had none. I mean, the sports industry is able to do it. There's all sorts of examples of how it can be done. But I think we need to value ourselves, and the general public needs to speak up, and the industry needs to speak up, that we need to have that support so that we can not only just bail out our businesses and the indie venues and try and keep that going in terms of, but we also need these emerging stages. We need to grow and develop our artists. There needs to be that across the country. Otherwise, we're going to lose the story. And I think that's something that I think we should really focus on while we can't be open.
And I agree with that also. But one of the things you need to understand is from the government perspective and from industry and how cities work, they're based on dollars. And so I think the discussion needs to change. I think we're not getting the right answers because we're not asking the right questions. If they understood, and we have reports behind this, that for every dollar spent in an independent venue, between $12 and $15 in indirect spending takes place as part of that. That's not a made up number. That's a hard number based in reality. So even folks like Live Nation, AEG, they get it. They want independent, smaller venues to exist because they don't have the infrastructure or the dollars or the ability to do what independent venues and independent artists do. And so I think changing the discussion, and that's what we're trying to do in a lot of these NEVA, in a lot of these NEVA cities, we're all talking about this now. And in New Orleans right now, we're talking with city government, we're talking with state government, and finding ways to enhance nighttime economy. If you put it that way, if you say, hey, we got to support music venues, people kind of turn a deaf ear. When you put it out as it's part of nighttime cultural economy that puts dollars in pockets and puts money into tax base, then I think changing the discussion is the biggest thing. And I think as part of that discussion, artists need to be involved in that. They need to understand that it's part about getting a fair living wage that's still within the confines of what a venue can and can't do. Obviously, you can't pay somebody, $500, if they got 4 men and you're paying them $2,000 and there's 50 people in the room. That's not a workable business model. But there are many different ways. And like Terry's talking about, another thing we're working with the city right now is on outdoor shows, finding ways on city grounds, on private grounds, and finding ways to do things in a safe manner. We're lucky in New Orleans because the weather's nice enough where we can get away with stuff like that. But I'm curious how that's gonna take off in other cities. I mean, Terry, you've been doing this, I've been doing it 30 years. You've got quite a few years on me. And Martin, I mean, you've been doing this a long time too. And again, I'm curious to hear, I kind of already been having these conversations with venues and promoters. I'd love to hear what you two are thinking about how you adapt to that and become businessmen. Like how we get the younger artists to understand what mailbox money is and how you can not manipulate, but use the system to your advantage, the PROs and the CSACs and the ASCAPs and the BMIs and all the new ones that are coming out, so we can sidestep all this and put dollars in their pockets.
Well, so many of the younger artists are just clamoring for an opportunity. How breaking acts is the biggest dedication that a manager can put to an artist's life, and they don't fully understand what it takes for us to get everyone else's attention, get the world's attention. These outdoor shows are great. When you can break down the paywall and anybody can come, the people show up. They always show up, and the bands are more flexible to play for less in a situation where they see something happening down the line. And the world just needs to change a bit. I go back into the 60s and attending great rock festivals in the Northwest, the old Sky River festivals, which were legendary with $5 ticket admissions. The price structure has changed. The funny thing that I've experienced as a musician is when I first started playing in the 70s, a casual paid $100. Still in 2020, a casual pays $100. There has not been an appreciated value of what musicians put into making their craft. Nobody pays you for that woodshed time. Nobody pays you for all those rehearsals. Nobody pays you for that late night of inspiration that writes that pop song that becomes a hit, or maybe becomes the thing that's your signature that supports you for the rest of your life. It's an interesting time that we're in, because it's time that we have to actually kind of reinvent the industry, just like Mark Geiger is taking advantage of it. And I know Mark, and I appreciate his tenacity and what he's doing. But if the independents are going to survive, we've got to kind of carve out a niche that protects our bubble and make sure that we guarantee that we don't get eliminated. There's something that I've experienced, and you probably have too, Howie, over the years. The big guys like to eat up the little guys. It's a cycle. And these big companies get so large that eventually they implode and everybody goes out and becomes independent again, and the cycle starts over again. We're seeing that now happen with booking agencies. We're seeing it happen with major promotion companies. And the artists are always the last ones to get the message that they should take their careers into their own hands. I've been lucky that I've had the knowledge and ability to book and self-promote and develop and produce my own acts. And, I encourage all artists to take more control of their music career with their licensing, their publishing, their record companies, and every other aspect that will support them for the rest of their lives. We're seeing the major record companies buy up casinos and resorts to create destination event venues for their own talent. So that it's expanding the 360 deal beyond just control of your assets. We are now controlling your career, but we've got control of the profit center, and you're just a cog that will cycle through our system. So artists maintaining their own independence is really, really strong. I emphasize that really, really strong. And the management and the local infrastructure that supports them is what's going to keep people going. So that's my 2 cents.
The other thing I wanted to add is that it's like this whole COVID, the whole shutdown. It's not like the wealth of this country has been put into a bonfire and burnt up. It's all around. It's just in fewer people's hands, So part of it is to get the wealthier music fans, they bear a stronger burden, to either sponsor shows or underwrite them, or something that we've been doing on this last tour was to have a sort of, not like a VIP section, but if you pay, in addition to the ticket price, an extra, it wasn't even a lot, like 25 or 50 bucks, there's a meet and greet with the band. You might get, a piece of merch, you get to check the sound check. But encouraging bands to do enhanced, just to think about ways that they can create extra value for their fans who do have money. Because even if, say, 950 of the 1,000 people that are going to come see us can barely afford a $25 ticket, but then there's 50 people who could afford a $500 ticket. So how can we take it, not to take advantage, but give those wealthy fans the opportunity to really make this happen and to activate their wealth? I think that's a big part of it too. It worked out for us on this past run. It wasn't game-changing money, but given that 70% of what we make goes to United Airlines, it did help us out a little bit. And this was the first real tour that we did, and people liked it. And part of it is like, well, as a band, how can we make this a more engaging experience? So more, tech bros will be like, oh yeah, I want to pay the ticket price, but I also want to drop an extra $100 so I can drink a beer with the drummer and ask him some drum questions or something like that. Like, I think that is a way that, and venues, on the other hand, certain venues were like, oh yeah, we do that all the time. Here's a room where you can meet your fans and make that happen. And then other venues were like, wait, you want to have people here before the show starts? Like, certain venues really facilitated it, and it was a great experience both for us and the sort of quote unquote VIP fans. And then other venues were like, we're not really ready for that, or we don't know how to do that, or we've never done that. So the answer is no, So do you think having the venue and or promoter working with the artist to create that added value, so it's not just going on the hands of the artist or in the hands of the venue, but working together to create it? So if you're getting a meet and greet, then you get merch from the venue, or you get special seating from the venue, or you get food or a drink as a part of that. I agree, and we've experimented with that over the years, but it's kind of hard if you're not in conjunction with the artist, if everybody's not on the same page, because the deals are structured in such a way that it's a percentage thing, not an added value. Then you got to go back and start it all over. And it kind of, you think putting it in the hands of both of them would be beneficial? Yeah, I mean, maybe it's weird because I'm like, oh yeah, the next thing we need is another middleman. But something that can really broker that, right? Like, what is a fair amount of money to ask a wealthy fan to drop for, and what is a fair amount of time after you've been sitting in a van and suffered through a sound check and maybe haven't like brushed your teeth or had one good meal, and you gotta like be like, hey, rich person, like, how you doing? Thanks so much for coming. Sometimes it's really cool, and other times it is just like someone wants to feel important. Either way, it's like, I'm happy that they came out. They can spend their money in a lot of different ways. But yeah, the venues and the performers have to be on board. And I think also if a venue knows, oh, we can give a lower guarantee, but we're also facilitating this extra income for the fans in this unconventional way, that is an incentive for them. The other thing I wanted to throw in is that in lieu of lower guarantees, there are some in-kind things that venues can provide, such as lodging or laundry or free parking or all these other things that touring bands spend out-of-pocket money on. And if they're making less money, but then they get their lodging covered by the venue, or you can stay an extra day, or there's a rehearsal space, or the whole band can wash their clothes. All of those different things add value and make it easier to imagine going out on the road for less money. Again, it's like most of the time we've experienced that is not in this country. It's in older countries that realize, have a much deeper appreciation for for culture, which is basic, and the bucks to put behind it, which is Western Europe. But you know, that would be those two solutions of like courting wealthier fans for this enhanced pre-show experience, and the venues being able to provide more in-kind support in lieu of straight money. Those are things that we can do with very little design or revolutionary changes or research or anything like that. But back to the dollars of that the $1 translating into 12 or 50, like that will resonate with a lot of people. And we really need to spread that and let them know that it's not just the venues and the musicians making money, but it's everybody within a certain radius. You know, it's the parking lot across the street, it's the hotel down the street, it's the pizza stand where the musicians eat before the show, it's the city who's making hundreds of dollars in parking tickets and towing vehicles. You know, it's all that stuff. It's the cops that are getting overtime for patrolling the music patrolling that district at that time. It's so many people are making money off the fact that we're playing rhythms and melodies, you know, and so I don't know where to take it from here. It's so crazy talking about this, knowing that it's going to be months before.
I did want to do bring back one thing that Terry was talking about that kind of brought back to what Dani was talking about. You were talking about changing the model where, you know, publicists and agents and managers and, you know, booking people are getting percentages. I think it goes back to what Terry was talking about and saying that the artist needs to accept responsibility to a point. I don't think it needs to happen early on, but there are some artists that are so focused on touring and so focused on their craft that they don't have the time. So giving up that percentage or giving up a fee as part of that is the key. But until you know what your craft is, until you know where your market is, you know, I think those are crucial things to be able to say that, you know, the DIY ethic that you know, Terry's gone and how the Wolf has survived is very key. But there's a point where we can't, you know, I can't do all my own social media. When you get to a point when you're doing 400 shows a year, you can't do all that yourself. So you peel off a little bit of it to try to grow the pie a little bit bigger. But I agree with you. I think the model needs to change, but I think there's a point where it has to stay how it is, and that especially burgeoning artists need to create scenes in their own towns. Heck, years ago, you know, in New Orleans, back in the late 90s and early 2000s, if you were a rock band, you all supported each other. You would look out in that crowd and you would see all the musicians. And I think that's stopped to some extent until, you know, unless it's somebody exciting coming to town, you know, if it's, you know, Sharon Jones coming in, or, you know, Derek Trucks, or, you know, whoever it is. You know, we've always focused on local, but I think we need to get back to and having the artists promote each other, creating more of a community, because the stronger the community is. And I think that's going to be the key. I think that was the whole focus of this conversation, was to say, how are we going to do this better coming out of COVID? And I think the only way we survive as independents, not just artists and venues, but as fans that love that independent music, that love getting into that small room and being with other people, until that can happen, it's about supporting that culture. And I think that's the drum we need to be beating in all of our communities, is saying we have to support each other, because no one else is going to come in and do this for us. And until we can show by more studies, and that study was out of the University of Chicago, and there are others, you know, this isn't made up money. These are landing fees. These are, you know, people getting hotels and babysitters and Airbnbs, and you can go through the whole list. And there are restaurants that count on places like the Howlin Wolf. There are places, you know, like Tipitina's, you know, these are all places that, you know, that create so much dollar into the economy. And without these independent venues, it's going to be tough to come back. And so we have to watch out for guys like Geiger. You know, he sees an opportunity, but that's a vulture capitalist in my mind. And he's not going to save those venues. He's going to turn them into just the next phase of a Live Nation that doesn't care about the community.
Yeah, that is really dangerous. The sort of disaster capitalism element of it.
I like that better.
Yeah, I played my first the wedding of my first marriage at CBGB's with Sharon Jones and the Dap Kings, and it breaks my heart to not be able to go back there and see. It's like a John Varvato. It's like a fashion store now. So on one hand, maybe it is better that it's not a venue at all rather than like some corporate shell of what it used to be. But it is really heartbreaking to see this, like, oh yeah, we're going to save, because Bonnaroo was like that. Like, we played the second Bonnaroo and it was one of the best experiences of my life. And then I went back with Anjali Kijo. We were doing the Remain in Light, Talking Heads Remain in Light, like the African version of that. And U2 was standing in the front row watching us, and we didn't have a dressing room. Live Nation did not give us a dressing room. We were like standing next to a diesel generator in the hot sun with no snacks for 8 hours. So I see what happens when big corporations that are all about the dollars, you know, when they keep the shell of the brand and they really, you know, deliver a crappy experience to both, well, they can't deliver full crap to the fans because they got to get their money, but the artists end up really suffering because of that. And that's a really dangerous thing. You know, the other thing is we do it like the Green Bay Packers model is like venues that are struggling. Maybe there's some kind of a public ownership that they become social clubs, you know, where it's like this legendary venue is going to close. You can become some sort of, fans can become part owners in it. Like, you're not necessarily going to make money. If there is some profit sharing, then you get it, but then you get a certain amount of access to the shows, like a much deeper buy-in. That would be the other thing I could see as saving venues. But again, the wealth is out there. It's not like aliens took America's money. Americans took America's money, you know, and they're chilling. They're having a good time. There's some people who were like, haven't felt this economically at all. I'm not one of those people, but they're like, the wealth has been consolidated, you know? So that's one of the things. It's like, we venerate the rich so much that we don't hold their feet over the coals. And it's like, the wealth is there. We just need to shake them down and and all dance while we're doing it. You know, it doesn't have to be like a guillotine. It could be a concert, but
power to the people.
Yeah.
Damn the man.
One of the questions I saw in the chat was they didn't like the precedent of not paying performers, and no performer likes that precedent either. But there are options. One thing that most people aren't aware of is a program called the Musicians Performance Trust Fund. And it's a national fund that the Musicians Union has that will underwrite payment to artists for free events. And if you look or check with your local musicians union, they will give you the information as to how to access this money. It's sitting there. It's all collected from film industry and other professional industries that pay money into this fund. So just throwing that out there, that there is some money that you can grab for some free events.
That's a super hot tip, Terry. Were you going to say something else?
You don't have to be a union member.
Excellent. I noticed we've had a very active chat while we've been talking, and I haven't been able to pay attention to the chat at all. We only have a few more minutes. If anyone has a burning question for these panelists, please put it in the Q&A, not in the chat, and then we will see it. So, all right, we've got just a few more minutes before we wrap this up. We're technically over time, but I was told we could run a little long. So anything else you all want to share with our audience while we're here? Last thoughts on how we're all going to navigate this?
Well, I'll jump out and make a promo for myself. You'll see an image in back of me that's from an event I created a few years ago that we're continuing on. It's called Borealis. It's a festival of light. I've taken the model of the European light festivals and introducing them here in the US. Our first year, we did over 120,000 people. A free event sponsored by Comcast, Amazon, City of Seattle, and Audi. We were able to bring in artists from all over the world to produce this. Kate was there. She saw it. It was massively successful. We had music leading up to dark, which allowed for a great showcase and new entertainment. But I highly recommend expanding your promotional skills beyond music into the rest of what's happening in the world right now. Light art is becoming the fastest growing art form in the world. You see events like Blink in Cincinnati drawing 1.5 million people in their second year. The Fête de Lumière in Lyon, France does 1.8 million people. It's great economic recovery for the cities, and everyone loves it. So that's my pitch.
Thanks, Terry. Are you all seeing the Q&A, or should I read the question that Dan Haber has put forward, which is, are there any interesting ideas out there for temporarily pivoting the typical music venue business model? And they've posted it to be answered live. I think we've heard some of those in this conversation. Anyone want to jump in on that?
You mean like a blood bank or utilizing the space for other things? I think that if I'm answering it correctly, flexing our space is probably something we should all be looking at. Having an empty spot until, load in at 6 o'clock is probably a waste of our real estate and a waste of our building. So pushing ourselves to think of different ways to utilize our space is probably really important right now. How can you support kids in school and music programs? How can you use your space to provide opportunity for community events and that kind of thing, which will build your fan base and your marketing opportunities for your venue.
Thanks, Dani. Howie, we're not hearing you.
There we go. So that's actually what we're doing with the Wolf right now. We've actually gone in partnership with a local coffee brewer, French Truck Coffee, as a way to generate additional revenue. So we're working on that right now, and hopefully we'll be opening in the next few weeks. We also hooked up with an artist collective that used to be a significant artist collective, and we're going to be doing their events every Friday, hopefully starting in the beginning of December as well. So we're constantly, as an independent, I kind of agree with that question. I know it's a question, but I agree with it in that we all are. If you're paying rent, you're not paying rent just for the times that you're doing a show. You're paying it the entire time. And so anything you can do to create an additional experience, kind of like what you were talking about, ways to bring the artist in, doing one of the things we do with Rebirth is we do workshops, and we let them, we ask to use the space in advance. So there are schools that come in early that'll come and see the Hot 8, and we get them in early, and they pay for both the artist and the space to come in and do something unique. So yeah, I think it behooves everybody to figure out new ways to use your spaces and to make certain that music continues to be an important part of your community.
Excellent. Okay, last thoughts. Anyone have anything else they want to say before we wrap up this panel? You all have been fabulous. Oh, we have another Q&A coming in. Uh-oh. Oh, Chris would love to connect with you, Terry, about the light events. All right. Well, I think Michael Bracy might be coming back.
I'm here. Yep.
Oh, there
thank
you are.
Kate,
Hey, Mike.
and thank you, everybody. That was an amazing conversation. We're so appreciative of your perspective and your generosity and your willingness to share. I love, sort of the connection points to other things we're talking over the 2 days. And just the one thing I would kind of add to the hopper is a lot of these issues are structural. And the music, sort of the live music ecosystem that we're inheriting is, to a large extent from our perspective, the result of decades and decades of a lack of interest and willpower at the federal government to take antitrust seriously. It started with the SFX run-up in the late 90s that led to Clear Channel Entertainment, which led to Live Nation, which led to Live Nation Ticketmaster, which now, AEG's in the mix. Martine referenced kind of the consolidation in the festival space. I mean, this has been a massive structural challenge that, again, has mirrored what happened in commercial radio. It's mirrored what's happened with the streaming platforms and the major record labels. And tomorrow at 11:40 a.m. Eastern, we're featuring a conversation with Barry Lynn from the Open Markets Institute to really get us to think about what tangibly is going to be happening over the next 5 to 10 years around reframing these conversations about corporate control and power, and what we can be doing to sort of unlock these things. So again, the people in today's live music conversation have been major drivers in what by far and away is the most effective music advocacy campaign I've seen in my 20 years of doing this work. in terms of the Save Our Stages, in terms of getting us on the cusp of billions of dollars of federal relief. And, the question moving forward is going to be, how can that then, what becomes Act Two? With thousands of venues working together to be able to be an advocacy voice on behalf of grassroots music venues. So that's stuff we're going to be talking about tomorrow in more detail, but we're really excited about, because again, we can take COVID out of the conversation and we can say, again, where was Showbox last year? Where were we thinking about our venue ecosystem before we got to COVID? There is going to be a point in the future where past COVID, hopefully, again, we're going to get through this to the best of our ability, but we're going to have to get back at these structural issues around gentrification, around ownership, around access, around access to capital, around what it means for musicians to be, sort of in this environment. Martine, the points you made about tapping into the wealth and resources of fans that are willing to put money on the table. There are a lot of big issues that we're going to be tackling. So your conversation today, I think, was amazing and really framed a lot of stuff very well.